mentioned women's programs. I think much of it was an appreciation of the government's programs on women. For example, the entrepreneurship program. There was also mention of the skilling programs, etc. I think so far the focus was on the existing programs, as CEO has said, and I think VC also said. The future part of it, you have to give them time to think about and think of new ways of doing it. But a lot of them mentioned that this is very important, that they are doing this, and that some of the successful programs which have been introduced by the center, and some of them have evolved these and added more programs to the system.
No, I think in the opening remarks, the PM was very clear. Skilling is up and square in front of his sights, both skilling and employment. It was reflected in the budget also, he said. And I think a couple of chief ministers clearly laid out what their thoughts are. Andhra Pradesh for one, Chhattisgarh for the other, Assam for the other, Goa is another one. All of them had very clear thoughts on, how to go about tackling it. So I think we need to put all of them together, and it'll come out. It'll come out when we come out with the national strategy, because this is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? This is going to be, it's a glide path, and the numbers are very, very ambitious. I think that's the way.
277.
Sir, till now we are hearing about the need for a population control measures.
Can you introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Premangshu from Anand Bazar Patrika. Till now we are hearing about the need for a population control measures, and now you are talking about this aging problem. So how to deal with that? Have you discussed that? Because we don't have any primary data, because census is not yet done. So that is one thing. And second thing is just one clarification. You said that when West Bengal Chief Minister was speaking and her 7 minutes was over, that Rajnath Singh just tapped the table. And did she register any protest, because she has said that central government was not ready to hear the problems of West Bengal?
It was very clear. There was no interruption whatever. She spoke, she crossed. For every chief minister who had crossed 7, the tap would be there. And then people would appropriately try to close it up in the next 30 seconds or 1 minute or whatever. So there was no difference in terms of treatment. No mic was switched off. And I think the finance minister has even given a bite or a tweet somewhere on this particular aspect, clarifying it. We were all, I can even, I have noted down what the West Bengal chief minister said. I wouldn't have heard it if our mics had been off. I don't think that was the case at all. And I think everybody got a pretty fair hearing. Nobody even, asked her to cut off. Actually, there was no conversation on that issue. She decided that, okay, my time is up, and that's it. And Cheney had told us earlier that she would leave immediately afterwards. And as I said, we adjusted her from afternoon to morning at her request only. So, you see, this is a forum where the center and states meet and talk. We are there to listen, actually. And I think and that was done duly. Also have to be respectful of the time for everybody. You have to finish it by some. You will be holding this at 8 o'clock otherwise, this press briefing. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned about population. You see, this is the first time one has even heard the thought being put on the table. Okay, so I'm not naming anybody, because in due course people will, start talking about it. There is, the word that is why which was used was demographic management. I think that is the word that was used. They didn't say population control. So demographic management probably means two aspects, that, that A, you start planning for looking after an aging population. That's one which I mentioned. It could be economic, it could be social, it could be facilities, infrastructural. The second part, of course, is how do you address? There are parts of India, I think barring 3 states, everybody is below the TFR of 2.1, which is the replacement rate. Or maybe only 2 states are about 2.1. See, that means even Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan are probably below 2.1. So with that kind of a situation, and there are states at 1.6 and all, at that they are going to run into rapid population declines at some point in future. We are not talking of anything political. We are talking of simple demographic problem. And it was acknowledged in the room that an old a population with a very high median age is a very different society from a population with a very low median age. It looks, feels very different with that kind of a population. So you have to start thinking about it. You go to Japan, the median age is 50. You will see the difference there.
I'll just add, we have been looking at of course, we have talked a lot about what's the global demographic change, but in Indian states, there are states which will be reducing their share of working age population, others which are increasing it. So we have to start thinking of it. We've started doing that. Some of you may have heard I've talked about that internationally, but I think the idea of the persons who mentioned this was this demographic change which is happening and will accelerate in the next 15 years actually. And of course, one aspect of that is the aging, but the second aspect is in terms of skills, the kind of jobs which will be created in the states which are declining relatively or in terms of population, working age. It's all about working age population and those which are increasing. So those internal dynamics, etc., we have to start thinking about.
275, Prashant.
Sir, Prashant Sahu from Financial Express. Sir, my question is that most of the developed nations have few sectors where they have world champions, be it technology or manufacturing, and be it some other sector. So which are the sectors you have identified in India where we'll have some world champions? Otherwise, the scale will not be there to sustain that level of that status for long. The second question is, when are we expecting the full scale of action plan to implement the vision document that you are preparing? Something has been announced in the budget, but...
A couple of thoughts. I'll take the issue about the action plan and then perhaps leave it to my colleagues to talk about leading sectors and strategy. The reality is that no parliament can commit its successors. So the operative time horizon is the life of this parliament. However, you can have targets for the longer run and try and get a consensus around that. But I do have to also say that I worked for a while at Royal Dutch Shell, which basically believed that there was so much uncertainty about the long run that you needed to operate in terms of scenarios rather than 25-year targets. Now, this is not entirely correct in certain areas like climate change. We are committing ourselves through our nationally determined contributions, and these are going to be updated in due course. So I think we have to get used to the idea that a 25-year horizon is very different from a 5-year horizon, but this is the distinction between planning and strategy. We need to have a clear sense of strategy, and I think there can only be one strategy for India, which is that our basic resource is our human resources, and while we have our Amrit Kal, while we have our demographic dividend, what we need to do is to raise the productivity of those human resources in whichever way we can, because that is the only sure way of getting rising standards of living. But I don't know if you want to take this.
I think the major emphasis in the discourse today was that if India's economy has to go to the numbers which we have been talking about in 2047, one of the major focus would be manufacturing, and manufacturing with a large focus on high value-added products. And Honorable Prime Minister was very clear that manufacturing and services have to go hand in gloves, because it's not one or the other, it's a combination, there are two. And third part was basically to bring more and more IP into the country so that your economic growth goes. So agriculture, services, and manufacturing, these are the three major sectors that will find our economic sectors.
And just to going into more specifics you want, all that will come out later, but some are already pretty well known. We've chosen semiconductors as to be one, we've chosen electronics to be the other, mobile phones to be the one more, we've chosen textiles to be an area. I mean, you've got a whole host of PLIs. 14 PLIs are actually targeting sectors where we can build up world-class capabilities. And there will be more such things coming up. NITI is targeting electronic components, auto components, chemicals. These are the areas. But you have to understand, once you are the fifth largest economy aiming to be the third or second largest economy, I don't think there are sectors you're going to leave behind. You are a very broad-based economy. So you'll probably develop strengths in probably 80% of all areas. You are not a one-trick pony, you know. You have to have more tricks than that.
Just want to add, you know, the interesting thing which I missed, because you asked about trade and FDI, I was thinking in the usual term, but the important thing here was to link the international with the states, which is the purpose of this conference, right? Not just think of national targets, national approaches, but what does it mean for the states? And I think that's a very important point which my colleague here mentioned, that manufacturing FDI eventually is in the states, okay? And they will not come, or they will come depending on the conditions in the states. We know that there are 4 or 5 major manufacturing states, but if we want to have manufacturing in other states, then you have to create the conditions in every state. So we have been talking about attracting supply chains, attracting anchor investors, but it is kind of abstract, it's national, coming to India, but they are not coming to India eventually, right? They are coming to particular states. So for example, some people say, oh, too much of it is going to Gujarat or something. But the issue is that every state can create the conditions to attract this FDI. And I think that was the important new focus for me personally of what the PM said today. Very, very important change, that don't talk just about the national attraction, but go into the states and make sure every state can attract FDI, attract manufacturing, attract these anchor investors, and participate in this development.
Yeah, one amplification to what Dr. Vimani has said, and the implication of that was that this is not about policy, it's about various aspects of state-level governance, if you will. So we may, on paper, have an extreme, and we do, have an extremely liberal FDI policy, but yet the FDI is not coming. And that's where the, if you like, what PM wants NITI to do, which is to have a checklist of what it means to be a friendly state, but equally important, that this should not be a source of polarization, that this has to penetrate even the less successful and less affluent states.
I think Dr. Virmani has put it beautifully. It's about bringing the international down to the state level. If you were to take away 3 big things from the whole meeting today in terms of conclusion. 1, develop an investor-friendly charter where you can rank states on a 100-point scale, so that how good are they in attracting investment and FDI. The second would be this new idea about zero poverty. You know, gradually you sweep poverty out of the country. And the third would be a basic nod that river grids are important. You've got large parts of eastern India flooding underwater, and large parts of western India which have periodic droughts, or southern India which has a lot of, again, drought problems. So these are 3 big takeaways if I were to take away. River grids, an industry-friendly charter, investor-friendly charter, and zero poverty.
24.
Sir, I'm Arun Dhanta from CNN News 18. My question is that we all know to achieve the target of Viksit Bharat 2047 is something where you need the support of center and states. But what would you say when people like Mamata Banerjee, who's the Chief Minister of West Bengal, says that Niti Aayog does not have powers, it's a toothless tiger, And in fact, she's saying that planning commission is something which should be brought back in place of